and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan, and today we are doing the final decisions video for Game Week 9. The video where we're going to be looking through all of the press conferences around all 20 clubs, as well as picking up some of those final topics, including captaincy, 1 week punts, differentials, and wildcards. So guys, you don't want to miss this one. If you do enjoy this weekly content, make sure you do drop a like and subscribe if you are new around here as well. Let's have a look at these press conferences. Alright, so injury news from around the ground, starting off with Arsenal, and as always, Arteta has not been very helpful to us FPL managers. He has said that Saka has been working hard to be fit. What that means, I'm not exactly sure, but it does suggest that Saka has at least been doing some kind of training, whether that's individual training or on the grass, I'm not exactly sure, but there is going to be some effort from Saka to be fit and to be available for the game against Chelsea, so he's not been ruled out. That's all I can say on that one. For Saliba, he has got a toe issue, but apparently that is not new. He has been in training. This is just something that he's been carrying for a few weeks, apparently. So I don't think this new flag on Saliba is necessarily actually a new injury, and actually maybe this is just going to be an ongoing issue from him that he'll be able to manage. So again, not too worried about Saliba, not as worried about Saliba as I am about Saka. I would imagine that Saliba is probably good to start against Chelsea. Trossard has a hamstring injury as well, but that was a couple of weeks ago now, so I'm not sure how he is holding up. Maybe he'll be able to come back as well, but I wouldn't be holding my breath on that one. For Aston Villa, there are no new injury issues, so that's pretty good news for Aston Villa. Moreno and Ramsey, they are still out, and of course Buendia and Mings are long-term absentees, so any other players you're worried about Aston Villa, there's probably no reason to be worried about them at all. Your likes of Watkins, Diaby, Cash, Digne, all those players like that are absolutely fine ahead of the game against West Ham. For Bournemouth, Kelly, Mefan and Scott, they're back in training, so they should be available to start. I'm not sure if they'll get game time straight away, but certainly they are going to be in and around the squad from here on out. Adams, Fredericks and Marcondes, they are all still out. For Brentford, Flecken, he has recovered from appendicitis, so we did kind of get that news before the break that Flecken was maybe not going to be able to play for a little bit of time, and maybe Strakosha was going to continue as the Brentford goalkeeper, but apparently Flecken has now recovered. So the Strakosha bench goalkeeper punt may not be the play after all. It doesn't seem like he's going to be too useful after all. Ben Mee could be back. He's going to be assessed, and Hickey is going to serve a 1-game suspension during Game Week 9 because he had picked up his 5th yellow card in Game Week 8. So he's going to be out for this Game Week, and they'll be back as normal from Game Week 9. For Brighton, both Estupinian and Lamptey, they are both out, so lacking a left-back there at the Brighton team. So Erling Haaland captained, maybe that is going to be beneficial if you own any Man City attackers. Maybe that could be pretty useful to you. Milner, he is back as well. And Mitoma, I know we got the news that he had some kind of illness. That was right at the start of the international break, but he's been training all week. So I imagine he's going to be absolutely fine. We haven't had any specific news. There was no mention of Mitoma in the press conferences, so we can only assume he's fine because he's been training and it's only illness, and it was a couple of weeks ago now, so I don't think there's anything really to worry about with him. He's going to be absolutely fine. For Burnley, a few players need to be assessed apparently. Alderkiel, Benson, Bayer, Goodmanson, Redmond, they're all going to be doubts for this game week. For Chelsea, there was loads of injury news that I couldn't all fit onto one page. There's a lot of players who are actually out still, including Broja, Chilwell, the likes of those players who we all kind of knew about anyway, to be honest. But Enzo and Caicedo, they are back. Disasi, Jackson and Reece James, they're going to be assessed. Yes, Reece James is back in training for Chelsea, so we could see the return of Reece James. Is anyone willing to take a punt on him back in their FPL teams over the coming weeks? I'm not really sure. He's caused us a little bit of pain before in FPL, but maybe in the future he can get back to being that amazing FPL asset that he clearly has the potential to be, right? Palmer has also trained this week, so there was a little bit of worry about whether Palmer, the 4.9 million man, could be out this game week or not. But those of you guys looking to go for the cheapie, there he's actually going to be fine, so he's fine to go for right now. For Crystal Palace, we've got loads. Ahmada, Decore, Lerma, Ward. There's lots of players who are back. Eze, Henderson, Olise, Schlupp and Tompkins are still out though, so yeah, moving on. For Everton, Gay is back. Coleman, Dele and Gomez are still out. However, for Fulham, no new injury news. Again, same as every week. Diop, Tete, Tosin and Traore are all out. For Liverpool, we've got Robertson out. So this is the big news coming from Liverpool. Maybe one of the biggest kind of injury stories of the international break. Robertson did suffer a shoulder injury. He's going to be out for 10 weeks. That is going to take us into 2024. It's going to take us to January. So quite some time before Robertson could be back. Now, a few people are looking at Tsimikas right now. Definitely understand that, but I did want to note that in the press conferences, Jurgen Klopp did name check Tsimikas, Gomez and Chambers as 3 players who could potentially play at left back. So although it seems fairly straightforward, Tsimikas, 4.4 million, he could come in and be a left back for Liverpool for a while. I don't think it's quite as simple as that, because Gomez has obviously played in that position before as well, and Liverpool might kind of endeavour to change the system, change the formation just a little bit, just to tweak it a little bit. So finally, we've got Darwin, Diaz and McAllister. These 3 players were obviously playing in South America, so big trip, big journey back back to the UK. But they finished their game on Tuesday evening or Tuesday night, Wednesday early hours, then flew back, all trained from Thursday. So really good news if you are an owner of the likes of Darwin and Diaz. They have come back. They're going to be available for selection. I think they've actually got a pretty decent chance of starting. However, Cody Gakpo, he has also trained. Now, I don't know if Gakpo is going to be ready to be thrown straight back into it, but he's trained. Is Gakpo going to be available alongside Jota to play up front with Salah? There is a possibility that that's going to happen as well. We might see Darwin and Diaz on the bench. Of course, Liverpool is the early kickoff tomorrow, so hopefully we're going to get some early team news for the Liverpool game. If you join me on stream tomorrow for the deadline stream, we will be breaking that news as it comes in. If we get any news about Liverpool, we will let you guys know. And finally on this page, Luton. Anderson is going to be out for months with a hamstring injury. Bell is also going to be out for this game week, but it's a slightly shorter term injury there. Osho and Townsend, though, they're going to be potentially available here. Not sure if they'll start straight away again, but they could be in the squad. Pretty good news for Luton to have a couple more players available. For Man City, it's good news for them all around. Rodri is back from suspension. Stones is match fit because he played those games for England, obviously, didn't he? So he's going to be match fit, ready to go for Man City. He's going to be a huge boost for the City. And in general, a lot of players are coming back and available now from Man City. We've got Bernardo back, we've got Grealish back, we've got some of the other guys back as well. There's a lot of options now in the Man City team, and the only player who is unavailable at this moment is Kevin De Bruyne. So we could now start to see a bit of the classic Pep roulette that maybe we've kind of got away with it. We've kind of got away with the Pep roulette recently. A lot of us have probably forgotten about how damaging Pep's rotation can be, but now everyone's fit, now everyone's available. Yeah, I think we could run into some problems there for sure. Moving on to Manchester United, Casemiro, he's picked up an issue. He's going to be out for game week 9. Amrabat, Region and Varane, however, are available, and Lindelof, after the tragic events in Sweden, obviously thoughts go out to everyone in Sweden who was affected by this. I don't want to talk about it too much here, obviously, but Lindelof is ready to play, so good for him. He's good to play after what happened. So yeah, man, good for him, honestly. Newcastle Botman, he's been improving through the break, but I'm not sure if he's going to be ready to start in game week 9 or not. But it's good news in general for Botman. I think we could see him return to the Newcastle starting 11 very, very soon. So those of you guys thinking about going for Lascelles would maybe hold off on that one. Those of you guys who own Botman, if you can afford to bench him this game week, I would be looking to keep him at this point. Isak hasn't trained at all during the international break, so that's pretty significant. It's probably going to be a late call whether he's going to be involved in the squad or not, but it does seem like Wilson is very, very likely to be the starting striker for Newcastle when they face Crystal Palace at home. So if you do fancy a punt on Callum Wilson, now would be a good time to do it. We've also got Joelinton back in the Newcastle team, which is pretty nice for them as well. Nottingham Forest, we've got Aurier. He is a doubt. Awani, he's going to train from next week, but still not ready to play this week against Luton Town. And we've got Montiel, Aina, Tavares, Danilo and Felipe all still out as well. So yeah, it's a good job that Nottingham Forest have a very large squad, because they do seem to have a decent amount of injuries right now, but definitely one to have a look at. For Sheffield United, Bulldog is getting closer to a return, but it's still not quite the time for him. So, yeah, he seemed a great pick in Game Week 1, didn't he, Bulldog? But, yeah, it seems to still be a little while before we might start to see some returns from him. Osborne could be back, potentially, and Basham, Davies and Egan are all out long-term, as we know. For Tottenham, Johnson has trained, but he is going to be assessed, so no guarantee that Brennan Johnson is going to start in this game. I would imagine it's still the same starting three for Spurs in the forward positions. Richarlison on the left, Son in the middle, and Kulusevski there on the right. Bentancur is now available. He's going to be eased back into the Spurs squad. This is going to be actually a really, really good news for Spurs, and I think the biggest beneficiary of this will be Maddison, because with Bentancur back in the Spurs squad, that's going to allow Maddison to play a little bit further forward in those really dangerous areas. So that could be huge for Spurs. Good news there for Spurs fans. There are no other new injury concerns, so in general, if you're a Spurs fan, good news. If you're a Spurs asset owner, also good news, I suppose. For West Ham, no new injury concerns. West Ham have been really getting away with it in these videos with no real new injuries for weeks and weeks and weeks. Johnson and Creswell are even back training. They're going to be assessed. But yeah, it's pretty much a clean bill of health for West Ham. For West Ham, because Johnson and Creswell, you know, they're training, they're on grass. Good news for them. And finally, Wolves. So Lamina and Semedo, they are both suspended this game week. Bueno and Aitnori, they could also be out as well. Not sure if they're going to be able to play or not. Bellegarde is back after suspension, however. So yeah, some out, some in for Wolves. Okay, so this is the big news that kind of broke yesterday evening / more today, really. And this is the potential for the Nottingham Forest versus Luton Town game to be postponed. Now, I don't want you guys to panic too much yet. Hopefully, we'll get more of an idea, more news by this evening and tomorrow. But the situation is basically this. There is a lot of rain in the UK at the moment. If you live in the UK, particularly in the northern side of the UK, you will know that there's a lot of rain and there is potential flooding going on at the moment. There's a river in Nottingham called the River Trent, and they are kind of worried that it's going to maybe overflow a little bit, cause some flooding. And it's not so much that the stadium and the pitch itself is going to be flooded, but more that there could be safety concerns around travelling to and from the ground. And obviously, when there's safety concerns for the people going to watch the games are called off. So there is a mixed kind of opinions on what's going to happen here. Ex-NFFC employee on Twitter said, barring a minor miracle, the club expect tomorrow's game to be off. So that's interesting. The staff have apparently been prepared for that possibility. Fan Hub Hatter has said that, yeah, a lot of the fans from Nottingham Forest are kind of acknowledging that there's potential for that game to be called off, and I've had some DMs, private messages from various people with different opinions, to be honest, about whether the game is going to get called off or not, but they're all kind of acknowledging the possibility. The Athletic, however, have reported that currently Nottingham Forest are feeling optimistic about the game going ahead. So there's nothing certain either way, but there is optimism from Forest right now that the game can go ahead. So one to keep an eye on, particularly if you are a Turner owner, particularly if you are taking a punt on a Nottingham Forest player against Luton, or if you have to rely on the likes of Kabore or other Luton players for this game week. Yeah, definitely something to consider before you go ahead of selecting and picking and transferring in those kind of players, and maybe something to think about before you pull the trigger on some of those transfers. But yeah, no definitive answer right now. I wish there was. I wish we had a clear picture, but these decisions are often left as late as possible, and therefore we're not going to get real strong news until tomorrow. 11 a.m. is when the pitch inspection is going to be, which is at the same time as the deadline, annoyingly, but I think we'll get a decent idea by tomorrow morning anyway of what's going to go there. Just be prepared, basically, for this game to be called off. Big question this game week is, should you wildcard or not? In general, I think we all kind of agree that the non-wildcard template, if you like, probably does need a refresh and some new players to come in. There's a lot of new emerging players that a lot of people want to bring in. Aston Villa players, West Ham players, Arsenal players, obviously the Mo Salah as well. There's loads, isn't there, right now? So, yeah, the big question is, should you wildcard now if you haven't done it already? And it's a difficult one because there are a lot of positives to wildcarding now, but there are also some positives to holding off until Game Week 10. And I think a lot of people already earmarked Game Week 10 as being a very strong wildcard week. And the reason for that is basically fixture swings. You guys might know what fixture swings are already, but basically it's when a team's fixtures go from pretty bad to pretty good, or from pretty good to pretty bad. And in those situations where a lot of teams suddenly have much better fixtures than before, or much worse fixtures than before, that means often we want to make a lot of transfers, and the best way to make a lot of transfers is using that wildcard. So, for example, you can see on screen, guys, I've highlighted some of these kind of teams here. So, Aston Villa, they have a tricky fixture against West Ham, but after that, plain sailing against the likes of Luton, Nottingham Forest, Fulham, etc., etc. For Brentford, great fixture against Burnley. Then after that, they play Chelsea, West Ham, Liverpool, Arsenal. It's a little bit tougher for them after that. So, you can see Aston Villa have a positive swing after 9. Brentford have a negative swing after Game Week 9. So, Game Week 10 would be a good time to remove Brentford players and bring in Aston Villa players as an example. Now, there's a few other examples here. So, for Arsenal and West Ham, both have tricky games this week, but really nice fixtures after that. Crystal Palace, same situation. Tricky game against Newcastle. You could arguably say Spurs is a tricky fixture as well, but then after that, beyond Game Week 10, things do start to get a lot better. So, it would be a good idea to not bring in Crystal Palace players yet, but wait, maybe wildcard them in or use your transfers to get them in from Game Week 10 or 11 onwards. Brighton, man, tough fixture against Man City away. But after that, you really want to get some Brighton players in. Surely, you know, Mitoma is at the top of my transfer targets list for Game Week 10, kind of alongside maybe some Arsenal players. And for Manchester United, they've got a tough fixture in Game Week 10 against Man City. In general, their fixtures are kind of good, but a good fixture against Sheffield United means you probably would want to keep a Rashford or a Fernandes for this week. But after that, from Game Week 10, you probably would want to remove those Manchester United players because A, you don't want to have them against Man City, and B, you don't want to hold them long term. But actually, when you look at a fixture like Sheffield United, even though Manchester United are in bad form, they're not quite as bad form as Sheffield United, so you would arguably still keep them. So that's kind of why people are talking about wildcarding or not wildcarding this week. It really depends on what side of the fence you sit, what your team kind of looks like right now. Do you have a lot of players who actually have good fixtures this week and you might want to not remove them quite yet, or, you know, whatever your situation is. So kind of up to you in a way, but I would not massively recommend a wildcard this week. It's okay, but it's not like a top week to wildcard, and Game Week 10 very much is a top week to wildcard. Alright, so I wanted to talk about the big hitters in quotation marks, because, I think a lot of us are trying to squeeze in as many of these players as possible, and obviously it's very difficult to do with the budget. So, what I've done is I've thrown on screen all of the popular kind of expensive players that we're all talking about right now, and I've ranked them here using the Fantasy Football Hub OptaStats tool. The link to this tool, by the way, is in the description if you want to go check this out for yourself. And I've ordered them based on their expected points over the last 5 game weeks. And expected points basically takes in a lot into consideration. It takes in clean sheets, expected assists, expected goals, what players have been doing on the pitch, and throws it all together and gives a rating of basically how well the player has been playing in general on those underlying stats over the past 5 game weeks. So that's what we've got on screen. At the top, you will not be surprised to see Salah and Haaland. So these are your 2 players who are performing the best right now. After that, you've got Heung-min Son. Yeah, he's been doing pretty well as well. And Saka after that, interestingly, as well. So despite giving up 2 penalties, we're still seeing Saka as one of the best performing players in FPL over the last 5. We've got Trippier and Watkins next. Trippier just above Watkins. So it's that kind of, your priority order is going to be your priority order, right? You got to choose which one you kind of fancy more. There's not too much between Trippier and Watkins, but it certainly seems like Trippier has just got the edge over Watkins as the better pick right now, but that's quite controversial, so I'll leave that one down to you guys. Obviously, you can't have them all, but who's better? I don't know. After that, we've got Odegaard. He snuck in there. Bowen and Darwin sneaking in a little bit lower than that. Should be noted that, of course, players like Darwin, players like Saka as well, play slightly less minutes than the others. So even though they might not be super high on this list, if they can get regular game time, we know they're going to perform very well. Maddison and Luis Diaz are below that. Julian Alvarez is dropping down the list in terms of how good he is as one of the big hitters. Bruno Fernandes, similar situation. Foden and Højlund is down here as well with Alexander-Arnold. And I know Alexander-Arnold has only started 2 games recently, but even when you consider that, the numbers aren't particularly good, and I'm not really sure that Trent can justify his price tag right now. 7.9 million. You'd feel like you'd rather go for Trippier at 6.9, really, wouldn't you? So yeah, I know a few people have been asking me about Trent recently. The numbers aren't there. When I watch him play, it doesn't look quite like he is worth the money. Obviously a good pick in isolation, but we've got to think about budget here, and I'm not sure Trent provides any value for money, really. I would rather spend the money on Trippier, slightly cheaper, and invest more in the midfield with the likes of Saka or Bowen or someone like that. And of course, we've got Watkins, who's going to take up some money as well. So Trent probably not the one. Certainly wouldn't sacrifice a player like Erling Haaland just to get Trent in. Doesn't seem to be worth it in my opinion. But yeah, those are your big hitters in how they're kind of stacking up against each other statistically. Right, a few people asked me about 1 week punts, and this is one really for Game Week 10 wildcarders, although some others of you might be thinking about 1 week punts as well. If you've got a transfer to burn, you've got a luxury transfer to make. I know I'm in that situation. I can do a bit of a luxury transfer this week. Yeah, there are some options to go for to try and capitalize on this game week. So in defense, we've got a cheap option, a medium price option, and an expensive option here as well. So Bolly at 4.5 would be my cheap option, assuming this game goes ahead. Luton Town at home, and Bolly is obviously an aerial threat. You never know when you're going to get a cheeky goal from him. And interestingly, Bolly does very well on bonus points as well, so that's definitely something to be interested in. Porro against Fulham, it could be really nice. His attacking numbers are decent. And Trippier, I think for this game week, is just a super pick. I think this Crystal Palace at home game is just an amazing game week for Trippier. One of the best game weeks we've seen from him. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can produce. But 12 pointers are on the cards. I definitely feel that is the case. In midfield, Morgan Gibbs-White against Luton. If I'm going for a Nottingham Forest attacker to target the Luton Town at home game, he would be the player I'd go for. In the medium price, and Mbumo falling out of popularity recently, but if he can counterattack against Burnley, then we know what we've seen by, you know, the likes of Son in the past, where he was able to counterattack against Burnley. It worked really well, and Mbumo's definitely that kind of player, and you get penalties from him as well. Diogo Jota, I imagine he will play. He is a player who didn't have to travel to South America, who is not had any injury problems over the international break, so a lot of people from the Liverpool fandom, I guess, are predicting that Jota is going to be a starting man against Everton. And we know that Liverpool at Anfield are a very good team, and we know whichever of those Liverpool attackers starts is going to be on for some good points. Jota, again, a 1 week punt because he's not really a player you'd want to own long term. I do truly believe that Darwin and Diaz are the main starters alongside Salah when they're available, fully fit, fully rested, etc, etc. In the forward position, Wissa would probably be the forward I go for. Again, targeting that Burnley game, targeting that pace in behind to try and score some goals in that game. For forwards, in the medium slot, Højlund. I know he hasn't scored a Premier League goal yet, but in all other competitions, you know, he's doing very well. It seems to he's doing everything in every game other than Premier League games for Manchester United, so surely he is due a return. Sheffield United, obviously a fabulous fixture for your Manchester United players. And Callum Wilson, like we kind of mentioned earlier, with Wilson, yeah, with Isak not training, could Wilson start? When Wilson starts, he bangs, and that's exactly what we want, right? So these are your kind of 1 week punts. A lot of these players, not really players I'd be looking to own long term, but for Game Week 9 in isolation, I like them. All right, captaincy for Game Week 9. A little bit of a debate this week about captaincy. I think it is reasonably clear this week, certainly clearer than it was last game week, and I am backing Erling Haaland this week. He would be my #1 captain choice against Brighton. A lot of the predicted points algorithms are putting Haaland out on top as well, and I think there's just a lot of confidence in general. Brighton, it looks like a difficult fixture when you use the Premier League fixture ticker, but believe me, when you're an attacker playing against Brighton, who can't keep clean sheets, are very open, very attacking, and a Manchester City team that's going to have all of their players back other than De Bruyne, this is going to be a real boost for City and a real boost for Erling Haaland as well. So I expect him to be back to his best from this game week. I'm not going to talk about the selling Haaland kind of trend too much, but what I would say is if you didn't sell Haaland in game week 8, you've kind of missed your boat. You've missed your opportunity to sell him, in my opinion. I would not be looking to sell him at all. I'd be looking to captain him game week 9 and game week 11 against Bournemouth as well. So yeah, I really would keep him. We've got Salah here as well. I think he is an alternative option to Haaland if you don't have Haaland in your team for whatever reason. But I think even if you do have Haaland, I think there are some shouts to go for Salah as your captain as well. He is not a super close second place, but you know, he's definitely worth considering for sure. And if you're brave, if you're feeling very, very brave, Son or Trippier would be my alternative options. I don't think Son is quite in the same league as Haaland and Salah, but he's definitely has some potential there against Fulham. I would just be wary of Fulham, who have actually improved defensively with Palhinha in the central defensive midfield position, and Leno, as always, being an absolute save machine. So I don't think it's that straightforward, and I don't think this is a super easy game. This is kind of like a medium kind of game for Son, so I'll be aware of that. However, Trippier, yeah, I feel pretty good about this one. Trippier against Crystal Palace as a super differential punt for the super brave people among you. Maybe you could go for Trippier. You'd have to basically pray that Haaland and Salah blank. But if that comes off, Trippier, if you can get a clean sheet against Crystal Palace, that looks pretty likely. Then he's going to get 3 bonus points as well, more than likely. If he gets an assist, we're looking at 12 points. And suddenly, we're looking at a very, very tasty haul for a young Mr. Kieran Trippier. So, yeah, I like this as a differential. But you would have to be pretty brave to actually do it, I suppose. But, yeah, guys, let me know. Are there any other players you're thinking about captaining? Have I missed anyone out of this list? Are you thinking about anyone from Manchester United, for example? Or maybe some of those other games targeting the fixtures? Let me know. It'd be really, really good to hear from you. A quick look at the goalkeeper start order matrix. So yeah, if you have 2 goalkeepers in your squad right now, I mean, I hope you have 2 goalkeepers in your squad right now, but this is the order in which I play them. So for example, like just a very basic example, if you have Pope and Pickford as your 2 goalkeepers in your squad, then you can see Pope is right at the top of the list. I would start Pope. Pickford is right at the bottom of the list, so I would not pick Pickford for this game week. This has got nothing to do with transfers or anything like that. It is just looking at the goalkeepers that you currently have. Which one should you start? A lot of people are asking me, for example, you know, I have Turner and I have Vicario. Who should I start? Well, Vicario is lower on this list than Turner, so I would start Turner personally. But yeah, this is just my opinion on this one and who I would look to start. Some of these goalkeepers at the bottom, like Sanchez, Johnston, Leno, Pickford, I'd be worried if I was starting them. But some of the guys at the top, Pope, Turner, Alisson, Flecken, even Onana, I would be happy to play them for this game week. And finally, a look at some differentials. So, yeah, we mentioned Tsimikas before, but I think I need to mention him again. 0.8 ownership, so really differential kind of defender here. It's a little bit risky going in on him in game week 9. I think I would ideally wait until game week 10, but if Tsimikas starts against Everton, a clean sheet is reasonably likely, you would say, in this fixture. But also Tsimikas, when he plays, he's often on a lot of set pieces, and his creativity is pretty good for the Liverpool team. So I think actually Tsimikas could be pretty decent as a pick, but he has to get that game time first. Like at 4.4 million, that is a good bargain for Tsimikas. I know we often say, yeah, Liverpool defenders are terrible, they're really bad, but in reality, the only reason we're saying Liverpool defenders in FPL are so bad is because they're so expensive. Tsimikas does not have that same problem. 4.4 million. That is a really cheap price. He is the kind of player like Malo Gusto we saw, who suddenly rips up the template a little bit there and can do some good at a really cheap price. So maybe an opportunity here. If Tsimikas plays regularly for the next 10 weeks whilst Robertson is out, that's going to be insane value for money because Liverpool aren't actually that bad defensively. They're not worth spending 7 million on a defender from them, but they're not like awful, right? We've got Neto here. I'm going to throw him in as well against Bournemouth. Got Sheffield United in a couple of weeks as well, so Neto's got some decent fixtures coming up. Could be a really nice differential to go for in your team if you're looking for that slightly cheaper midfielder. A little shout out to He-Chan as well from Wolves. He could potentially be a pick, and one more in the midfield slot. Maybe I should have thrown them all on screen, but Soucek, another midfielder I really like. Only 4.9 million. He's been playing far more advanced recently and been getting goals for West Ham, so that could be an interesting pick. And finally, Darwin Nunez. As long as he starts, if we get news that Darwin starts, he is a differential I would like to hold for a decent amount of weeks. And I know 12% ownership is not super differential, but it seems like everyone is talking about Haaland, Watkins, and Alvarez, and maybe Darwin doesn't get the same amount of airtime in the FPL world. So yeah, we know Darwin, when he plays, he's phenomenal. So yeah, we're just got to hope he plays, basically. And there we have it, another super long roundup for everything for Game Week 9. Hopefully we covered everything you are interested in talking about. But if I missed anything, let me know in the comments. If you've got any questions at all, throw them down below and I'll try and answer all of them, or as many of them as I can, before the deadline tomorrow. But aside from that, guys, loads more Game Week 9 content on the channel. I think there's like 10 Game Week 9 videos that I've uploaded this week, so make sure you go check them out. Aside from that, I will see you tomorrow on the deadline stream, where we will hopefully be breaking the last minute Liverpool team news. Aside from that, thanks so much for watching once again, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.